Alright, Math 1, Pythagorean Theorem, here we go. So, remember, when we're talking about the Pythagorean Theorem, we're dealing with right triangles. We know they're right triangles because they have the little mark right there that means it's a 90-degree angle. Okay? So, the thing to remember about the Pythagorean Theorem is that you have to understand which parts are what. So, the part opposite the 90-degree angle, that's our hypotenuse. Okay, that's the important one to always know. Okay, we usually denote it with the letter C. The other two are the legs, which we use A and B to describe them. Then the formula says that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now remember, these exponents here mean A times A plus B times B equals C times C. Okay, that's essentially what it's saying. Okay, so in order for this to work, we have to be given two of these pieces of information, and we'll find the third. So that's kind of what we're going to do here, okay, for these first ones. So if you're talking about them, the first thing you need to remember to do is to figure out where the hypotenuse is, because in the formula, the hypotenuse is the one all by itself, okay? And if you don't have it as the hypotenuse, you'll make some mistakes, and that will not be good. So, if we look at number 1, the hypotenuse is always that longer looking side opposite that 90-degree angle, okay? So, 13 would be my hypotenuse. X we could call A, 5 we could call B. Now, does it matter if X is A or B or 5 is A or B? That part doesn't matter because they're on the same side. And with addition, it doesn't matter the order. So I'd go X squared plus 5 squared equals 13 squared. Well, 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. 13 squared, 13 times 13 is 169. If you didn't know that, use a calculator. So now we solve for X. So we subtract by 25. That gives me X squared equals 144. Then we would, to get rid of a square, X times X, the opposite is to do a square root. Okay, the square root is taking a number and splitting it up into what value times itself will get us to what we need. So we'd undo X squared, which would just give us an X. Then we take the square root of 144, which happens to be 12. And like I said, if you didn't know that, you could use a calculator to help you figure it out. Okay, so there's number 1. Number 2, we do the same exact thing. Okay, except this time our hypotenuse is all by itself. So I'd go call 3A, 4B. So I'd go A, so let's actually use our numbers. 3 squared plus 4 squared would equal C squared, or I guess X squared would be the better one to use. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, equals X squared. 9 plus 16 is 25. Take the square root of that, and we get 5 equals X. So that's the length of the hypotenuse is 5. Alright, so let's just, and this is basically the two different types of problems you'll deal with when you're just finding the length of one side given the other two sides. You're either going to have to subtract the side from the hypotenuse to find the other side, or you're going to have to add the two sides to find the hypotenuse. Okay, so let's get going. So 3, call that AB, this would be my hypotenuse. X squared plus 6 squared would equal 10 squared. X squared plus 36 would equal 100. Subtract 36. We get X squared equals 64. Take the square root of it, and X equals 8 for number 3. For number 4, call that A, B. That's our hypotenuse because it's the longest side and it's across from the 90-degree angle. And that's critical to understand, or else you'll set up your problem wrong, and it'll look like it'll work, but it won't. So we get 144 plus x squared equals 15 squared is 225. Subtract by 144. We'd get x squared equals 1, 8, so 81. Take the square root and we'd get x equals 9. Because the square root of 81 is 9. Alright, number 5, same idea. Hypotenuse is right there, so that's our C. The other two we call A and B. So 5.5 squared plus x squared equals 10.4 squared. So here's definitely a part where we're going to want to use our calculator because we've got these decimals. So 5.5 squared is 30.25 plus x squared equals 10.4 squared, which is 108.16. So we subtract 30.25 from both sides. So we get x squared equals 77.91. Take the square root of that, and x would equal about 8.83. Round to the nearest hundredth. It was actually 8.826664149042944, but we'll round to the nearest hundredth. Alright, 6 is the same idea. Hypotenuse is x. We like these ones. So x squared would equal, and then we've got a and b. They're both 6.5, so 6.5 squared plus 6.5 squared. So 6.5 squared is 42.25. So plus that same thing equals x squared. So you get 84.5 equals x squared. Take the square root of that, and for number 6, x would equal about 9.19. Alright, let's take a look at 7. 7 has our hypotenuse as x, so we'd go x squared equals, call that a, 12.6 squared plus b, 6 squared. 6 squared I know is 36. 12.6 squared is 158.76 equal x squared. Add 36 to that. That gives me 194.76 equals x squared. Take the square root. We get about 13.96 for our x for number 7. So hopefully you can see it's a pretty straightforward process here to get this figured out. Okay. So number 8, the hypotenuse is 8.6. X is not always the hypotenuse, so be aware of that. So 4.3 squared plus x squared equals 8.6 squared. So 8.6 squared is about 73.96. 4.3 squared is about 18.49. So we go 73.96 minus 18.49. That gives us x squared equals 55.47. Take the square root of that, and we get about x equals 7.45. Alright? Alright, so moving on, we've got 9 and 10. Now, the difference between these ones are they have their radicals, okay? And they're not easy numbers. And usually when you see it like this, they actually want to keep them as radicals. They don't want to turn them into decimals, okay? But we set it up the same way. Hypotenuse is this one. So I'd go a and b. So square root of 11 squared plus x squared would equal 2 square roots of 3 squared, okay? Now, whenever you square a square root or something like that, okay, they undo each other. So that would just become 11 plus x squared would equal, now this one, we really have two pieces there, so we'd go 2 squared, which would be 4, times the square root of 3 squared, which would be 3. 4 times 3 would give us 12. So we'd have 11 plus x squared equals 12. Subtract 11 from both sides. X squared would equal 1. Take the square root, and x would equal 1. So, pretty simple answer for just having it equal 1. Okay, number 10 we do the same way. Hypotenuse is 16, so 16 squared would equal a and b, x squared plus square root of 170 squared. So 16 squared, this one I don't know offhand, so I'll have to type that in the calculator. It's 256. Square root of 170 squared would just leave us with 170, so we get x squared equals 170. Subtract 170 from both sides, and we get 86 equals x squared. Take the square root of that. Okay. Now, for this one, the square root of 86 is actually 9.27, but they want it left in simplest radical form. So let me show you what that means. Okay, you're going to have to factor down and figure out what pieces you can pull. Okay, so what I mean by that is square root of 86. Okay, we want it to become some numbers inside here. And if there's two of them, because a square root is two things multiplied by together, that'll give you the information that you need. So 86, we could go 86 divided by 2 would give us 43. Okay, can we divide 43 by anything to simplify it and come up with a whole number? Don't think so. I think 43 might be prime. So in that case, we can't simplify this, so our answer would be the square root of 86. But let's say it was a square root of 90. Okay, well 90 could become 9 times 10. Okay, 9 would be 3 times 3, 10, 2 times 5. So we'd have the square root of 3 times 3 times 2 times 5. Well, these 3's, because there's 2 of them, I eliminate one and I can pull the other one out, and it would actually be 3 square roots of 2 times 5. There's only one of each. So 3 square roots of 10 would be the simplified version of square root of 90. So sometimes that's what they want you to come up with. Alright, now the next group. So now in the next group, so 11, 12, and then all these guys, well, that's a lot of them. Okay, we're deciding if each triangle is a right triangle. So we want to see if, okay, we A and B and C, because that's the biggest number, it'll be C. Automatically the biggest number is always C. So I want to see if, does A squared plus B squared equal C squared? Well, that's the Pythagorean theorem, so if that's true, it's a right triangle. If it's false, it's not a right triangle. So I set it up. So 8 squared plus 6 squared should equal 100 squared if it's a right triangle. So 8 squared is 64, 6 squared is 36, 10 squared is 100. Okay, 64 plus 36 is 100. Does a 100 equal 100? That's true, so therefore, yes, number 11 is a right triangle. Okay, then we try it for number 12. Biggest number by itself. So 12 squared plus 11 squared. 12 squared is 144, 11 squared is 121, 15 squared is 225. Okay, so add those together. That's 5, that's 6, that's 265. Is that true? No, that's not true, so these ones don't make a right triangle. And when you have 3 numbers that make a right triangle, they actually have a fancy name for it. It's called a Pythagorean triple. But essentially what it means is that these three lengths together can make a right triangle. Alright, so that's all we're doing here is just practicing doing that. So the biggest is always by itself. So 5 squared plus 12 squared. So 25 plus 144. Add that together and we get 169, which 13 squared is 169, so yes, it's a right triangle. So 10's our biggest, so 8 squared plus 4 squared, does that equal 10 squared? 8 squared is 64, 4 squared is 16, that only adds up to 80, 10 squared is 100, so no. 15 is 9 squared plus 9 squared equal to 15 squared. 15 squared is 225, 9 squared is 81, 81 twice is 162, which is not equal to 225, so no. 16, we'd go 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 9 squared, 9 squared is 81, 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, those add up to 100, so it does not equal 81. So no, not a right triangle. 17, biggest number, so 12 squared plus 4 squared is equal 13 squared. We should notice that up here we had 5 and 12 that equal 13, so most likely this isn't. If you double check it, you find out that you have 160, which does not equal 169, so no. Okay, number 18. So does 8 squared plus 5 squared equal 10 squared? So 64 plus 25, which would be 89, does not equal 100. So no again. So 19, does 12 squared plus 5 squared equal 15 squared? So 144 plus 25, does that equal 225? Nope, we get 169, does not equal 225. So nope. Apparently we were missing out a lot, aren't we? So 9 squared plus 12 squared, does that equal 15 squared? So 225, 144, and 81. Okay, I believe this will work. Be 5, 2, yep. That is true, so yes, that's a right triangle. Those numbers make a Pythagorean triple. Okay, looking at 21, we've got 52 squared plus 39 squared. Does that equal 65 squared? Okay, so that one I'm going to have to use my calculator for. So 52 squared, oh, that's a big number, 2704 plus 39 squared is 1521. Add those two together is 422.5. So does that equal the same as 65 squared? 65 squared does equal that same number, so yes. Okay, 22, 8 squared plus 6 squared, does that equal 10 squared? I want to say we already did this one, didn't we? Yeah, right here. So when we found out that yes, they both equaled 100, so yes. Okay, now 23 here. That's still the biggest number, so 16.4 squared plus 20.8 squared, does that equal 26 squared? 26 squared equals 676. 20.8 squared equals 432.64. 16.4 squared equals 268.96. Add those together, and we get 701.6, so they're not, so no. And then 24 goes 6.3 squared plus 9.4 squared, does that equal 10.5 squared? Okay, 6.3 squared is 39.69. 9.4 squared is 88.36. And then 10.5 squared is 110.25. Okay, so does this add up to 110? Don't believe so. Nope, it's 128. So not equal, so no, 128.05. So they are not equal at all. Alright, oh, and apparently we have two more, because of course. And then we've got quite a few problems, huh? So, the hypotenuse, now this one could be difficult to decide what the hypotenuse is. So if you need to, take the square root of 11, which is 3.3, and the square root of 15, which is 3.87. So that's our biggest. So I go 1 squared plus square root of 11 squared. Does that equal 15 squared? Remember, that cancels. 1 squared is 1. That's 11. So that equals 14. Does that equal the square root of 15 squared? Does not equal 15, so no. 26. 13 is going to be our biggest here. If you needed to, you could go square root of 30 and times that by 2. That just is about 10.95. So 2 square roots of 30 squared plus 4 squared, is that equal to 13 squared? So the square root cancels out, and we're left with 30. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 30 is 120. 4 squared is 16. Okay. So we get 136, which 13 squared is 169. So these are not a Pythagorean triple. They're not a right triangle as well. Alright, now these last problems, it wants you to find the area of each triangle. And so to do that, we need to figure out to make sure we have all the pieces, right? Area, if you recall, is 1/2 times base times height. The base is the full bottom. The height is from that other opposite vertex at a 90-degree angle. So that would be my height, that would be my base. So I'm going to have to figure out the extra pieces so that then I can use the area formula. So Pythagorean theorem will help. Now, one thing to note, if we have these that are the same size, okay, it means since they share a side, and that has to be the same side as well for this to work. Okay, so 127, I know that's 7.8, so that's going to be 15.6 for B. To find h, I use the Pythagorean theorem. I go h squared plus 7.8 squared is equal to 10 squared. So 7.8 is 60.84 equals 100. So h squared equals 100 minus 60.84, which would be 39.16. Okay, take the square root of that, and we get, it says round to the nearest tenth, so we'll say 6.3. Okay, then my area says I go 1/2 times 15.6 times 6.3, and that gives me an area of 49.14 square units. Whatever those units were, we'd square them, and that would give us what we need. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. So for this one, if we cut that in half, it would be 7.6 on each side. So our base, so area equals 1/2 times the base, 15.6, times the height, should be 7.8 again, huh? 15.6. So to find the h, we go, once again, 7.8 squared plus h squared equals 12 squared. Okay, so we get 60.84 plus h squared equals 144. We subtract 144 by 60.84, and we get h squared equals 83.16. Take the square root of that, and our height ends up being 9.1. So then I go 1/2 times 15.6 times 9.1. We get an area of 70.98 square units. Alright, let's take a look at 29. So I know this is 4.4, so my base is 8.8. Using Pythagorean theorem, 4.4 plus h squared equals 5 squared. 4.4 squared, that is. So h squared, 25, 4.4 is 19.36. Subtract 19.36 from both sides. X squared equals 5.64. Take the square root of that, and h equals 2.4. So area 1/2 times 8.8 times 2.4. And we get an area of 10.56 square units. Okay, number 10. So this one, 4.4 again. So my base, 8.8. Okay, our height is going to be whatever this ends up being. So that's 10 squared, not 100. It equals 100, so h squared plus 19.36 equals 100. Subtract 19.36, h squared equals, we get 80.64. Take the square root, and h equals 8.9799, so we'll just round that up to 9. So 1/2 times 9 times 8.8 gives us our area of 39.6 square units. 31, same idea, that would be 8, base of 16. So we'd have 8 squared plus something squared, the height equals 9 squared. 64 would equal 81, subtract by 64, and we get 17. Take the square root of that, and h equals 4.1. So 1/2 times 16 times 4.1 would give us an area of 32.8 square units. 32, we've got 3.2, so 6.4 for our base. So for this right triangle, 3.2 squared plus h squared equals 5 squared. So h squared and 25, then what 3.2 is equal to, and then we'd subtract by that number. So 3.2 squared is 10.24. So we subtract by that, and we get h squared equals 14.76. Take the square root of that, and h equals about 3.8. So 1/2 times 6.4 times 3.8 would give us an area of 12.16 square units. Okay, now 32, 11.2, so 22.4. So 11.2 squared plus h squared would equal 12 squared. So h squared equals 144 plus whatever 11.2 is squared. That's 125.44. We subtract by that from both sides, giving us 18.56. Take the square root of it, and we get our height of 4.3. So 1/2 times 22.4 times 4.3 gives us an area of 48.16 square units. For 34, this is not 4 right here, so I go 9 squared plus equals 4 squared plus question mark squared. So let's solve for that. We've got the height of 4. We'll figure out the base, 1/2 times those. So we get 81 equals 16 plus question mark squared, subtract by 16. We get question mark squared equals 65. Take the square root of that, and we get that other side of 8.1, which we add to 4. So it'd be 12.1 for our base. So to get our area, 4 times 12.1 times 1/2. We get an area of 24.2 square units. Now, 35 and 36, we're doing that same exact process, but I'm running out of time. So we find a here to get the base. A squared plus 6 squared equals 8 squared. Solve that out. We get 5.3. Add it to 15. 20.3 for base. Height of 6. Do that and get 60.9. and I'll give you the answer for 36 in the same format. And there we go.